We go to the noted attorney, Don Barrett from Barrett Law Group. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning. How are you this morning?
It's been a long time. I think we talk about every 3 or 4 decades.
I think the last time we talked was during the Hurricane Katrina cases, and you called me because nobody else, the lawyers on the coast, wouldn't take the cases for the neighbors and friends down there. They all wanted to represent the insurance companies, and we took those cases and we won them as it turned out.
I don't want to sidebar too much on this one, Don, but you've been involved in some. If you go back and look now, and I hope you're gathering all of this stuff to write a book or something. Are you thinking about doing that?
If I ever had time.
I know. So if you looked at some of the cases, the top 3 cases that you would say that people know Don Barrett from.
I would say that, well, the first one, of course, is the tobacco case.
Yes, number 1.
And probably the opioids litigation, which is really ongoing now. My firm represents about 800 hospitals around the country, including many in Mississippi, suing Big Pharma, and the manufacturers and distributors of the opioids and the creators of the opioid epidemic. And then the third case, I guess you'd say, as far as I'm concerned, this Express Grains case is the most important case, or as important as any case I've ever done.
Let's talk about this, because we got, how many farmers? Is it about 30 farmers? And for the people who have no idea the scope of this, let me just turn it over to you and you explain exactly what this is about.
Okay, well, it's actually 317 farmers, as best we can see. And in short, Express Grain is a big terminal facility where they buy farmers' grain, store it up in Greenwood. They were broke. This is what we think the facts will show. I mean, we are convinced that this is the truth. We've not been able to do discovery yet, but this is what it looks like to us. This grain elevator was broke last year at the end of the year. They owed millions and tens of millions of dollars to this bank up in Kansas City. The bank kept them artificially afloat so that they could fill their elevators with grain the next fall. And then they sprung their trap and put the grain elevator into bankruptcy and seized all the farmers' grain that was in those elevators. And we think, in other words, they set a trap for these farmers, and then they slammed it shut. And unless something is done, there are going to be hundreds of farm families around the Mississippi Delta and elsewhere, Calhoun County, Chickasaw County, of course, Holmes County, and LaFleur County, and all over the Delta are going to be bankrupt and themselves, things that they've worked hard all their lives for. This was a year that the farmers had good crops and really good prices. It was one of these magic years that happen not very frequently for farmers who work hard for what they make. But this was the year that they were going to get straight, that they could pay off their loans and have a little spending money.
Don, let me ask you this.
Now it's been robbed from them.
Have you been able to legally get some of the financial paper trail prior to them pulling the trigger on the bankruptcy?
Yes, sir, we have. We don't have it all.
Yeah.
But it makes it very clear that they knew exactly what they were doing, that they laid a trap for these farmers, that we know that they misinformed the Department of Agriculture in Mississippi, Andy Gibson's office. Last year around, in December, they were not paying their farmers. And one of them called the Agriculture Department, knew that the Agriculture Department had control over the licensing and of these grain elevators, and said, we're not being paid, and talked to the chief investigator. The chief investigator then called John Coleman, who was the CEO of Express Grains, and Mr. Coleman told him, said, listen, said, this is just paperwork. We're redoing the loan. It has nothing to do with being financially solvent. We're solid as a rock.
Ooh.
This is just paperwork, and it's the bank's fault. They're a little slow. Said, if you don't believe me, call the bank.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he did call the bank in Kansas City and talked to the loan officer that was handling the account, and the loan officer agreed with everything that John Coleman had said, and told the state Mississippi Department of Agriculture that Express Grains was in very solid financial condition.
Wow!
And there was no problems whatsoever, and that was a lie.
So are they being brought into this lawsuit?
The agriculture, the Department of Agriculture,
no,
absolutely. They'll be called on to testify, and I believe that they will testify. That had they known the truth, had the bank been accurate with the information that they gave them last December, they would have jerked Express Grains, license, and none of these farmers would have been in this position.
Don, is the biodiesel? They also have a biodiesel refinery. Is that part of the assets, or is it incorporated in a different place, or how do you do that?
That's a great question. It's part of the assets, but it's mortgaged to the hilt. These farmers are not going to be paid back by what Express Grains has, because Express Grains is as broke as the Ten Commandments, and their debts way outweigh their assets, and the relief for these farmers is going to come from this bank that set a trap for them, intending, we think, to steal these farmers' grain crops. And they did it.
Does the bank also hold the assets from anything from the biodiesel refinery?
Yeah, there are other liens against the biodiesel refinery, and the bank also has liens against the biodiesel refinery, and everything they have is mortgaged to the hilt.
So where's the grain itself? And when we're talking about grain, what are we talking about? Soybeans and cotton and wheat, or what is it? Not cotton.
No.
Soybeans or rice or what?
Great question. We're talking about first corn. Corn is harvested first in Mississippi,
mm-hmm.
and that harvest comes in starting in late August and hits a crescendo, towards the end of September. And the soybean harvest starts coming in the middle of September. The bank knew that those grain elevators would be filled by the end of September, and that's when they could spring their trap, and that is when they sprung their trap, and forced Express Grains into receivership, into bankruptcy. And so it's the corn crop plus a large part of the soybean crop. Now, but those crops have been taken out and sold, they're gone pretty much.
This has nothing to do with future contracts. It's just as this was this fall's or this year's primarily.
That's correct.
Harvest.
That's correct. It's the grain that was delivered to the terminal. And there were millions of bushels of it delivered to the terminal.
You say we're talking about totally somewhere around $70 million?
I think more than that, more like $100 million.
I do want to ask you a couple of other questions.
Can you imagine what that does to these little communities?
Yeah.
I mean, these farmers they're the backbone of their communities. They're the backbone of their churches. It's going to devastate these.
It does. It's the lifeblood of most of, in these small towns, even more so. More with the attorney Don Barrett. A couple of other questions when we get back right after this lawsuit against the Delta farmers have filed, or lawsuit that the Delta farmers have filed against Express Grain. And what's the most hopeful or positive outcome from this? From Don Barrett coming up next. Back live in the Trustmark studios, and let's continue our conversation with attorney Don Barrett. Barrett Law Group in Lexington. And Don, I was noticing that the guy who is the CEO of the company, John Coleman, so the chairman of the company, said in a statement that Express Grain had filed for bankruptcy only in order to reorganize its business and continue its activities normally. But how do you?
Oh, sure.
How do you do
the
that?
way they do that is to wipe out all their debts, and including the debts to these farmers. But John Coleman wouldn't have been able to do that, but for the misconduct that we believe the misconduct of the bank in Kansas City, and they are the ones responsible. They are the ones we believe that pulled the strings. And that's where we're looking to get the relief from these farmers. Paul, if I could say one other thing.
Sure.
Small firms like mine, the only way that we can take on these huge cases like this is to group together. And those of us that are experienced in this, have done it a long time, we understand that. And so that's what we've done in this case. We've put together a group of a consortium of firms. It's not just Barrett Law Office. It's the Merkel and Cox firm in Clarksdale, the Lewis and Lewis firm in Oxford, and the Cuneo Gilbert firm in Washington D.C. And we are able now. We have the resources that we can, we're a virtual law firm for purposes of this one case, and we're working together as if we were in one law firm, and we've got the wherewithal now we can meet these big firms, the national firms from New York and the major cities, which is what we will be facing. We can meet them head on and have an even shot at them. So that's how it's not just me. It's my firm, the good lawyers in my firm, and the good lawyers that we've been blessed enough to be associated with. Charlie Merkel, Mike Lewis.
Let me say this also. What is also scary is because we have this tremendous need now for farmers to pass that farms on to the next generation, because a lot of the baby boomers are retiring or getting out of farming one way or the other, but hopefully passing that on to their sons and daughters and grandkids. And boy, this doesn't help at all to already thin. We don't have enough people getting into it on these family farms. But I do wonder, how is this going to change what happens now as far as the contracting? Because my understanding is that some of these farmers, they put 100% of their harvest into this. They didn't diversify.
Oh, that's right. That's exactly right. And they had no reason to diversify. The way they were assured that this company was financially sound, and the bank knew it at the time that they were making these misrepresentations. And as to what's going to happen, I can tell you, I've had farmers, older men, cry and weep in my office. I mean, tough guys used to having tough breaks farming, but they've never seen anything like this. I've had two of my clients, our clients, talk about suicide. This is a disaster. It's like a tornado has hit all these farms, and unless something is done, many of them will go out of business. Their farms won't be passed on, and they'll be bankrupt themselves.
In the chain of command of who's going to get some money first, are these they're probably down on the line to get some money from if any money is to be recouped?
They're going to get, if they get money, it's not going to. They'll get pennies on the dollar out of bankruptcy, and they're good bankruptcy lawyers working in the behalf of these farmers to do that. But it's going to be pennies on the dollar. But that bank in Kansas City is responsible for all of their losses, and it's our job to see that they recoup all of their losses.
What is the status? And we only got a couple of seconds here, but I got to get this in. What's the status as we speak this morning, Don?
We have a class action filed in federal court in Jackson, which essentially covers everybody. But we need to sign these farmers up individually. If any farmer we've signed up, dozens and dozens, but we really need to sign all of them up because in unity there's strength, and they need to call 662-834-2488. That's my office in Lexington, or call Charles Merkel's office in Clarksdale, or call Mike Lewis's office in Oxford, and we can get you signed up and get you involved.
Good man. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it very much. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you.